eyes, our ears, and our hands as we think about and study what you've taught us and as we go about our days. Please be with us in all that we do. Okay. I'd like to begin with a quote from St. Gregory of Nazianzus, who was Archbishop from what's now Turkey. And his summary of the Trinitarian faith was written originally for catechumens in Constantinople in the 300s AD to prayerfully meditate upon as they were just beginning their Christian life, but it could just as well be something he'd be speaking to us today. Above all, guard for me this great deposit of faith for which I live and fight, which I want to take with me as my companion, and which makes me bear all evils and despise all pleasures. I mean the profession of faith in the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I entrust it to you today. By it, I am soon going to plunge you into water and raise you up with it. I give it to you as the companion and patron of your whole life. I give you but one divinity and power, existing one in three, and containing the three in distinct ways. Divinity without disparity of substance or nature, without superior degree that raises up or inferior degree that casts down, the infinite connaturality of three infinites. Each person considered in himself is entirely God, the three considered together. I have not even begun to think of unity when the Trinity bathes me in its splendor. I have not even begun to think of the Trinity when unity grasps me. So, it's a lot for a beginning catechumen to take in, but I guess he thought they and we could handle it. Most of you probably heard about the Trinity since you were very young, either by that name or through calling out God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. By talking about the Trinity, we mean to say, of course, that God is one God, and yet at the same time, he is somehow three persons in God. The creed we say at Mass every Sunday is precisely a profession of faith in the Trinity, saying something about how God is in himself, and about how that Trinitarian God has and does act in relation to us. There will be much about the Trinity that I won't have time to talk about, so please feel free to bring things up for further discussion or question and answer. And I commend to you the Catechism because it's beautiful. There's references to Church Father and Bible all over the place, and if you don't want to buy it, you can even get it online. So later in this talk, we'll explore how God is three in one in three, and some analogies for that. And we'll also explore how a mystery can be rational without being obvious or exhaustible, like something you can just grasp and, okay, I got it now. But first, let's briefly discuss what we mean by Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, using the Catechism for a guide. So, we call God Father because he's creator and sustainer of all. He is the source in a more radical way than our parents or anything in the universe ever could be. We call God Father because he exercises providence over his creation and promises that he will watch over us and bring us into his kingdom if we allow ourselves to be guided by his will. So God is Father like a king and a transcendent authority, but also with the tenderness of the holiest human mother or father. He cares about us. Christ revealed that God is Father not only in relation to us in time, but in a radically unimaginable way within God himself. He is eternally Father in relation to the Son and vice versa. From the Father and the Son proceeds their Spirit. We say that in the Creed all the time. This Spirit, in relation to us, spoke through the prophets and now guides the Church. One important thing to emphasize is that there's an equality of being among the three persons in the Trinity. Many times the Church had to go back and clarify and further define doctrines related to the Trinity when certain groups would crop up saying, for instance, that Jesus was God but less than the Father, or just an adopted son, not really God, or that the Spirit wasn't part of God himself, or it was just a metaphor kind of and shouldn't be worshipped as God. The church fathers, in arguing against these heresies, pointed out that in baptism and in the Mass and in the very message of salvation, the truth of God's oneness and threeness have always been and must be affirmed. So, for instance, Athanasius and some of the other church fathers who are arguing against the Arians would say, look, if Christ is not truly God, but some lesser spiritual being of some kind, and you see these kinds of things crop up again in history. It's not that they're always the same old debates in some sense. So if Christ is not truly God, but some lesser spiritual being, it wouldn't be very good news that he became man, because he wouldn't really be able to bring us into communion with God or heal us, which is something we say only God can do. And therefore, we have to say, and it makes sense to say that Christ is God, as the church had always professed before that. And besides, that would mean that this whole time, they're saying this in the 300s, mind you, when all of us, including you Arians, doctrinal Arians in the crowd, have been worshiping Christ as God in the Mass, you've been basically worshiping something besides the one and only true God, meaning that if you accept this, your false doctrine is making us all idol worshippers, because this whole time we've been professing that Christ is the Lord. So you see how worship and worship practices and professions can be used. They go in and out with, or how do I say it? They can be used as arguments in doctrinal disputes and vice versa. The logic of the faith is both in our practice and in the words that we say, not one or the other. What was at stake in these disputes was not merely abstract wording. The church fathers were concerned about speaking truly of God. First of all, of course, because they care about rightly praising and adoring and worshiping God, and didn't want the traditional faith of the people corrupted. But also because only the full truth about God's triune nature could be good news for our salvation. So, let's look at the basic doctrine in the dogmatic terms real quick, and then we will, as we go on, I hope you'll have a better feel for it. So we have to maintain a balance about the three and the one, as the technical language that developed is meant to help us do. The divine being in its unity is called substance or essence or nature, and the term person is used in a technical sense to designate the real distinction among Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And they also use the word relation to point to the fact that the distinction between the three lies precisely and only in the relationship to the others. It's not like one has a perfection that one of the others lacks or something like that. So, the Trinity is one. The divine persons do not split the one divine nature among themselves, like each taking a piece of it, but each is somehow God, whole and entire. Each person is that supreme reality, the divine substance or essence or nature. At the same time, the divine persons are really distinct from one another. As the Catechism says, God is one, but not solitary. The name Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are not simply names designating modes of God's being. So we can say that God is creator, redeemer, and sanctifier, and it's true, three different actions in relation to us, but the distinction among the three persons isn't just that. It's not just that the one God is acting in these three different ways, and that's all we mean by saying Trinity. And we can draw an analogy between God and, for instance, a human woman who's mother to one person and wife to another, or sister to someone else. Has these three different ways that she acts to different people, but there's only one of her. There aren't three persons, so the analogy kind of falls short, and that's kind of what modalism, which is one of the extremes, would want to say. But the distinction among the three persons aren't just modes of being of one person, like that would be. So, how are the persons distinct? Not by having different natures. Not by having certain perfections that the others lack. They're distinct precisely in their relations of origin, is how it's often said. So it is said that it is the Father who generates, the Son who is begotten, and the Holy Spirit who proceeds. The divine unity is triune. While they are called three persons in view of their relations, we believe in one nature or substance. Indeed, everything in them is one, where there is no opposition of relationship. The Father is holy in the Son, and holy in the Spirit, and so on. And what this might look like, I'm going to try to paint the picture more later. I just kind of want to get the terminology out there, and hopefully you'll be confused enough that they're excited about bringing some of it together. Well, God is not just Trinity in relationship to us alone, as I said before. It's right for us to praise him as our creator, redeemer, and sanctifier. The church teaches us that all of the divine plan for us is the common work of the three divine persons. They are one in being, of course, and one principle of action. But at the same time, each of the divine persons performs the common work according to his unique personal property. And this language here is coming from the Catechism, so that's one of the reasons I wanted to get it out here first. This means that our praise of Christ is praise of God entire. Our praise of God is praise of the Trinity. And at the same time, we can meaningfully pray not just to God or to the Trinity, but in relation to the specific persons, as the Spirit moves us to do. For instance, we might ask the Lord to send his Spirit, maybe in particular cognitive gifts of the Holy Spirit as you're going about your studies for wisdom, reason, factual knowledge, practical prudence. Or we might ask the Father to keep us in his care. So it's okay for us to be praying in those different ways, and it's part of how we enter into the mystery, actually, to think about and pray to God in all those different ways. And we relate to the different persons of the Trinity differently, in other words, which becomes especially clear due to Christ's incarnation and the way we participate in God's life through becoming one with Christ. So here's what we need to try to do when thinking about the Trinity, as St. Athanasius explained so long ago. Now, this is the Catholic faith. We worship one God in the Trinity, and the Trinity in unity, without either confusing the persons or dividing the substance. For the person of the Father is one, the Son's is another, the Holy Spirit's is another. But, paradoxically, the Godhead of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is one, their glory equal, their majesty co-eternal. My talk and your discussion afterwards are going to be an exploration of this great mystery of our faith. In fact, the Catechism says that the mystery of the Most Holy Trinity is the central mystery of our Christian faith and life. It's the mystery of God himself, God in himself. It is therefore the source of all the other mysteries of faith, the light that enlightens them. It's the most fundamental and essential teaching in the hierarchy of the truths of faith. So, that's not me saying that, that's the church. Pretty cool. And not only that, the Catechism also adds that the whole history of salvation is identical with the history of the way and the means by which the one true God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit reveals himself to men. So here they're emphasizing how the Trinity affects us, not just God in himself, and reconciles and unites with himself those who turn away from sin. So, that's the doctrinal, those are some of the doctrinal statements filled out by the Catechism, which isn't the doctrine itself. Before going on, we can take a step back to briefly talk about the concept of mystery, which hopefully will be helpful, and because mystery can have so many connotations, positive and negative, and we talk about the Trinity as a mystery, so it'll be worth reflecting a little bit more on what exactly we mean by that. There are some things which are just too vague, too deep, too important to be able to put into words. Or rather, words cannot contain them and can't exhaust their reality. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, we shouldn't make any attempts, and that we should not offer with a certain humble tentativeness what words we can. And this is what we mean here by mysteries. We call these things mysteries, but not because we can know nothing of them. They're mysteries because we can always go deeper, and they're always more complex from our perspective than our limited minds and our linear ways of thinking or reasoning can grasp all at once. Like when we think we can't just grasp the whole all at once, even about the things in the world, we have to this and the next thing and the next thing.